Welcome to Connection Artist, the podcast for building better relationships by design. Love and human connection are fundamental needs for all of us, but how do we cultivate lasting, emotionally healthy, fulfilling relationships with ourselves and others? I'm Luca, and I invite you to join me in meeting everyday people with diverse backgrounds and ages who all have one thing in common: a genuine passion for fostering meaningful connections. You'll hear their heartwarming stories and practical advice for building lasting marriages, lifelong friendships, and self-love. In this season 1, we sit down with 10 couples, learn how they met, and hear the secrets behind how they've built lasting marriages. Their insights will inspire and enlighten you. I also interview guests who found and maintained warm, lasting friendships for decades, and they're sharing how they did it. And lastly, we can't forget the importance of growing a loving relationship with ourselves, so we discuss building self-love and confidence. I've brought together a fantastic lineup of guests for you to meet who will share their unique stories and invaluable communication and relationship advice. Together, we're learning the secrets to building more meaningful, fulfilling relationships, one conversation at a time. I'm Luca, and I invite you to join me in becoming a connection artist. All right, everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Today, we have Jessie and Cory. I am so excited for you guys to meet them. They are my first same-sex couple that I'm interviewing. In the past interviews, you've heard love stories and advice from male and female couples. And today we get a chance to meet a same-sex couple, which I'm very excited about because I want to share stories that are representative of modern dating. And in modern dating, it's becoming more and more acceptable to be in same-sex relationships. So I'm eager to learn what that's like, to learn more about that. We hear a lot of stories in media and such, mostly representative of heterosexual couples. So this is a great learning opportunity for all of us to learn a little bit more about what that experience is like in building a long-lasting, healthy, loving relationship, regardless of the gender that you are with. And today I'll let them introduce themselves. They are both newlyweds, but I'll let them briefly introduce their names and maybe their age range, if you're comfortable, and how you guys met.
Yeah, for sure. Well, my name's Jessie, and I'm 37.
I'm Cory, and I'm 35.
And you mentioned modern dating, and we're both millennials, so of course we met online, and so that was really fun and exciting for us. Online dating always presents its own challenges, especially today, where it's hit or miss on the quality of people that you will meet. It's almost like a fast food restaurant sometimes, where some people just want to meet for a quick moment, but that was not the journey that I was on, and I think the journey that he was on at the moment too, because we're sitting here years later and we're now married. So I don't know if you have anything else you want to share. I think you should. Maybe about your experience.
I mean, I would agree. At the time when we first met, quite a few years ago, we were both in a different place. And we reconnected in Minneapolis, Minnesota during Pride. And the rest is kind of in history. We've been together for over 2 years now. Just recently married, so. Yeah.
So you started dating 2 years ago, and it's just in the last month, right, that you guys got married?
Correct.
Congratulations.
Yes, thank you. Actually, in the last 2 weeks. So
very fresh.
2 weeks ago in a few days. So, yeah, very fresh.
Great, amazing. And when you guys were on these dating apps, because some people are on the dating apps and they're not sure what they're looking for. Some people, like you mentioned, are kind of looking for shorter term experiences. Did you guys both, in your minds, were you looking for long-term relationships or to build that? Or were you just kind of open to seeing, we'll just go with the flow and see whatever happens, don't really have any expectations or goals for my dating life? What was that intention when you first started on those dating apps?
That's a good question. For me, it was a mixture of each. I was definitely open to seeing what experiences there were out there, but at the same time, my intention was to seek something long-term. And so I went in with that tilt. That was my angle, is to find someone that would be compatible for the long run, because that's where I knew that I wanted my life direction to go, and not getting any younger. And so it just made sense in my situation to really want to seek someone out that was like-minded in that sense.
How about you, Cory?
For me, it was a little bit different. I had it to build friends. I was new to the city, and so, trying to meet new people is kind of what I used it for in the beginning. And then I got to meet him and go out on the town in downtown Minneapolis and Minnesota. I kind of knew he was the person right from the get-go.
Really?
So,
I'm excited to talk about that in a moment. And for those who are listening who might be seeking a same-sex partner, did you use an app that was specific to gay couples, or did you use one that was more generalized and just had the feature to select same gender?
Oh, that's another good question, because there are a plethora of apps out there, except this time we met on Hinge, which is a really good app to meet someone that is a bit more like-minded for a long-term situation.
Oh, okay, cool. And so you, Cory, mentioned that you came here looking for friendship, and it sounds like you're more broad-minded. Like, I don't necessarily need to get married soon, but I'm just looking to meet people and have good conversations. Is that right?
that is correct, yeah.
Okay. So when you met him, when you met Jessie, how did you know early on, and how long in were you like, this is my person? What about him, or what kind of compatibility factors did he have that resonated with you?
Honestly, it was his presence, the way he carried himself, and the way he interacted with me when we were together. Even when we were out with his friends, there's a short story that I got to sit in the front of his vehicle, and his friend had to sit in the back seat, and his friend was not happy about that.
So he prioritized you from the beginning?
Yes, he did.
I did.
He definitely did. In fact, his friend brought it up at our wedding.
Oh, really?
It was a wedding
He got
story.
the boot?
He got the boot. And it was on the second time hanging out, I think, something like that.
Something like that.
So,
How did you feel around him versus in the past when you had dated people?
I don't know. I felt like more a priority, and he really paid a lot of attention to me and made me feel welcome around all of his friends too. So Yep.
Versus some people wait a long time to introduce you to their people. It's very, separate groups for separate people kind of a thing.
Yep.
And I know
with his friends, if I wasn't liked, I wouldn't be sitting here.
Okay, so he kind of used that friendship as like a test almost to see if...
They're my sounding board.
Okay,
so
good.
They're my litmus test to determine whether or not there's compatibility there. Your friends have insight that you don't have sometimes.
That's
and
true.
I do take my friends' thoughts and opinions pretty seriously, especially when it comes to my dating life, because I'm a giver, and they know that about me, and sometimes they have to protect me from myself in that sense. So
they don't want you to get taken advantage of by someone who tends to be a taker.
yes, exactly. Yep.
Do you feel like you're a giver, Cory?
I'm definitely a giver.
Okay.
Not a taker.
Good, because that is a real thing in a lot of relationships where givers sometimes do end up with takers, and that creates that imbalance and frustration and resentment and so many things that add complications to relationships. So it's interesting that you kept that in mind, knowing that about yourself, having that self-awareness that, hey, Jessie, I am a giver, and I need to make sure that there's someone who's not going to take advantage of that, but reciprocate that instead with me.
I agree.
Good. And what about Cory made you realize from the beginning, or what kind of feedback did you get from your friends that made you realize he's a good one to keep?
Well, I'll start in reverse. Like, the feedback I got from my friend was positive, because he was still there at the end of the night.
He didn't leave.
He didn't leave or get booted. So he had staying power.
Okay.
And so that was a positive sign, because my friends are unabashedly honest, and they will tell me if they think I should exit stage left from a situation. So they did not. But for me, it's his energy. He has a very magnetic energy that just really draws you in. And that's very appealing to me, because you don't always meet people who are a light in the world. So some people are shadows, even though they may present themselves as a light, but he was a genuine light. And so that really drew me to him. and he has a very infectious laugh and smile. And so I figured, why not give it a shot? We'll see what happens. So maybe I kind of like the guy.
So it sounds like you had a positive energy, and that was prioritized for you. Someone who just makes you feel positive and kind of uplifts you. Maybe when you talk about being a light in someone's life, I imagine that being around someone like that uplifts you, makes you feel an elevated version of yourself, things like that.
Yeah.
Are those things that, or how did he make you feel? How would you describe how he made you feel?
Just generally happy. And so it's almost indescribable, because it was just you have this chemical reaction in your body that just makes you feel a certain way, I guess.
Yeah.
And so it was just overwhelmingly positive. And so, it just spurred like Maya Angelou quote, people won't remember what you did or what you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And I always think that I don't remember exactly what we did, but I remember feeling just overwhelmingly happy when we first met.
That's so beautiful. So what about key factors that you feel have really contributed over the last 2 years in growing your relationship and staying together as partners? Are there any aspects or any skills or any experiences that you were like, okay, these are green flags, this is going to help us, or these are maybe some things we need to work on?
I would say communication and learning the difference between how we were both raised. So coming from very different families, obviously. He grew up in Chicago, Illinois area, and I grew up in southern Minnesota. So very different.
So culturally or societally a little different from each other.
Yes. So learning how to communicate, and then also understanding, the lives that we've lived were different. So our experiences have been different, and trying to come together on those differences and communicating through them. And
how early in your relationship did you guys share about your upbringing and growing up, and how those were similar or different from each other?
I think it was probably a bit more recent where we were able to really dive into it. I mean, on the surface, you can tell we're different because you being white and me being black. So that it gives you a visual, but you can tell that we are culturally different. But it was almost assumed that we would have those differences, but it's the nuance that we recently got to explore a bit more. And so I would say it unfolded over the course of time. It was fairly consistent, but really accelerating over the past few months as we ventured down this path towards marriage.
Okay. Did you guys talk about your parental upbringing, or was that very similar or different? Did you guys both come from two-parent households, or how is that similar or different between Cory, what you experienced growing up, and you, Jessie, what you experienced?
Well, for me, I grew up, my mom and dad are still married. They've been married over 40 years. Lived in the same house since I was basically born. They still live in the same house. So very different from what you've experienced.
Yeah, I grew up partially with a single mother. My father's in the picture. It's just he was in a different part of the state. Had a fairly nomadic childhood. I went to 10 different schools. I lived in different places, all parts of the northern part of Illinois, and was raised by many people in my family. My mom, dad, stepmom, stepdad, grandparents on both sides. But that brought me to have a different understanding about how relationships are, because I've experienced so many different aspects of it. But it's partly a byproduct of being born to other kids. Basically, my parents were 16 and 17 when I was born, so they were still in high school.
Yeah,
and so
just figuring things out.
They were figuring things out on their own.
Yeah.
still growing. So yeah.
Do you feel like the relationships that you witnessed or experienced as early children in any way shaped, for better or for worse, the relationships that you had later in life, or the partners that you found yourself with, or even your current relationship? It's kind of a big question.
It is. I just letting you speak first, though, because I always talk. But I think so. I think those formative years really help inform how you interact with people, and not just platonically, but also romantically. Yes. And so I've seen various relationships between all the people that were part of the village that helped to raise me. Mm-hmm. And so I like to think of myself as an amalgamation of all of those different views that I've seen. I've seen my grandparents that have been married since well before I was born, before my dad was even born. Mm-hmm. And I've seen all the way through my mom and her divorce to my stepdad and my dad's divorce from my stepmom and them dating again. And so, and watching them find love at later stages in life. And so, yes, it's definitely helped to shape how I perceive and navigate my romantic relationships. But I think in my situation, having seen so many varieties of how those relationships are formed, I almost get to pick and choose the best parts of those and use them for the most part. And of course, you always get the baggage parts of them too. So that's just part of being a human.
Yeah.
So,
was there any key lesson that you learned in your observations of all these different kinds of relationships? Was there anything key that you're like, this is something I want to do in my future, or something that I don't want to do in my future relationships, that is? I
think the one that comes to mind initially is doing what makes you happy. Mm. And so in a relationship, it's, of course, give and take. But you can't continue to give until you have nothing left to give, because that's going to make you unhappy and resentful. So you have to find those moments of joy for yourself and make sure that you seize on those, because if you do that, then the people around you are also happy, and that includes your partner. So. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so Cory mentioned earlier regarding the question of any key factors that have contributed to your relationship success. He mentioned communication and discussing early childhood backgrounds, or I guess dating backgrounds in general. Anything else that you'd like to add to that for you has been a key factor in helping you build and sustain this loving relationship?
Yeah, for sure. I would add vulnerability, because we don't allow ourselves to be vulnerable, especially in American society. Where whether or not we like it, we have these really binary male-female roles that we see on television, and I'm speaking from a gay perspective even. So, and then there's always expectation of that, and we also have this machismo culture that we're slowly dismantling, which won't happen in our lifetime, but we're slowly dismantling it to make everyone feel like they can be their authentic selves. So we don't oftentimes let ourselves become vulnerable to our partners, and I say that from experience. Mm-hmm. So I'm not the most vulnerable person. It's a work in progress for me every day to even continue to let him into some aspects of my life. And so being able to let your defenses down, to be more open, and to let someone else see what your inner working is truly like is a gift that you can give to your partner.
That's really good. So for people who might be struggling also and relate to that feeling of, I feel very uncomfortable being vulnerable in my relationships, do you have a process or something that you think of, or something that's helped you to slowly over time become a more vulnerable person? Or is there anything that you ask your partner Cory to help you with, or anything that you're doing that's helping you make those baby steps to being more comfortable being vulnerable?
Couples therapy.
So,
I mean, big advocate of therapy for individuals and even as couples. And, contrary to popular belief, it's not always a signal of issues in a relationship. Although we did go there as part of an issue for us to become stronger, but the outcome has been, it's paid off in spades. And that's where between my individual therapy, which I've ceased for a while, and also couples therapy, I realize that I do put my guard up as part of my upbringing. Mm-hmm. But getting past the stigma of therapy, and especially couples therapy, I think is probably the second biggest gift you can give to your partner, because it lets you truly see another side of your partner that they may not allow you to see without the presence of a third party that's there to be neutral, because sometimes those conversations can be painful. Even if you go into therapy without having a perceived negative precursor, it's going to get worse before it gets better, because you're going to learn things about your partner that maybe you didn't know, or they're going to feel a certain way about how you interact with them that maybe you didn't know, and that makes you uncomfortable. And then you have those uncomfortable conversations after your hour-long therapy session when you get home later. But it's well worth it, because you do learn to become more vulnerable day by day, even outside of therapy. That's the gift that really keeps on giving.
So it sounds like it's the exercise of, on a somewhat regular basis, challenging yourself to be more open, and at least in couples therapy, it's kind of enclosed in a somewhat controlled conversational environment or a guided environment, but it sounds like that's helped you to come out of yourself a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. It really has, and I think it helped us to elevate our relationship, which I think helps us to be a lot stronger, and also present a more united front, especially being a parent. And presenting what we hope are healthy relationship behaviors for our current kid and future kid.
Have you found that it's gotten easier for you once you started that snowball of, I'm starting to be a little vulnerable in couples therapy, now I can do it on my own outside of couples therapy? Or do you still feel like you kind of need that assistance in a structured environment to do so?
It's a daily practice. It's like any other habit. You have to continue to practice it. It's like any other muscle. You have to continue to work it out and flex it in order for it to grow stronger. Not perfect by any stretch of the imagination at it, but I do make it a point to be mindful and self-aware of when I'm not being vulnerable or when I am putting up my defenses. And that's coupled with the check-ins that we have at therapy. So sometimes maybe I thought I was being vulnerable or being open, but it wasn't to an extent where maybe Cory felt that was the case. And I could have done better, but it's used as a learning experience to alter my path if we encounter a situation in the future and we will, because couples do have conflict, is what you should. And so when we have them, being mindful of how certain approaches worked or didn't work in the past.
That's really good. And I really love that you took the time to realize or have some self-awareness or introspect that, hey, this is an area that I'd like to improve on myself, my vulnerability, because I know it's going to help our relationship, and then you took active steps to do that. Some people don't do that work to really introspect or deep dive into themselves. Some people, even when they know, hey, I'm not good at XYZ, that's okay though. I am not changing who I am. I'm not changing my ways. The person that I'm with is just going to have to deal with it. Like, accept me as I am, or there's the door kind of an approach. But this is an example of, you're laughing, Cory. Have you guys not met people like this?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
See?
100% know people like that.
See? So it sounds like it helps when you are willing to be a little humble and realize, I'm not a perfect human. No one's a perfect human. Here's something that I know is a healthy trait to have in a relationship. Vulnerability is one of many healthy traits. And you guys, you had the courage to go to couples therapy together to work on that, which is, I applaud you for doing that. That's really great. And I hope that it inspires other people to consider getting help if they need it, or to recognize in what ways can they be more vulnerable in their own relationship if that's something they've been struggling with.
Yeah, I would say it's actually brought us a lot closer to each other too, because you find out a lot more about somebody while in those therapy sessions. It gets a lot deeper than what you probably do at home. So
yeah. Well, that's really great. So what about some challenges that you faced together, and how did you overcome them? Every relationship, as you mentioned, has conflict, has challenges, and I just want to set a realistic expectation for listeners that no relationship is perfect. Little things come up, and give them ideas or suggestions from real-life couples of how they can address those challenges when they do come up. Similar challenges or something a little bit different, but they can still take the skills that you guys share to apply to their unique situation. Is there anything that you'd like to share that's been a challenge for you so far in your 2-year relationship and how you overcame it?
I would say there's been 2 bigger ones for us. One, you talked earlier about roles, right? Male, female roles and things like that. I was married before. I have an 8-year-old daughter. We have an 8-year-old daughter now. And, looking back, when we first started merging things together, like finances and things like that, like we're both very successful in our career. And for me, it was giving up some of the financial side of things and letting him handle it. And like letting some of that power go and not having to have the control of it. And like trying to find a balance of that was kind of crucial for me, at least. It was a different feeling because I was used to being in control, and now it's like, okay, he's actually better at money than I am, a lot better. So like that was one of the things for me of learning that obviously he's got the best interest for us too. Like we're a common goal, we're going towards the same thing. So learning how to give up some of those things was one of the biggest challenges for me, I guess. So
that's really good. Like the recognition, that moment when you realize I've done things on my own, or as a single person, you have to do everything on your own. Yeah. But I've met someone who is stronger at something, a skill, a life skill that I'm not as strong in, and relinquishing that control over it. I can imagine how uncomfortable that will feel. That does feel for a lot of couples. Whether it's, hey, my partner's better at managing money, or they're just better at, whatever it might be. Moving from that independent mindset to a union mindset, I think, is probably a challenge for a lot of people.
Yeah, I agree. So it's, it was a challenge. It sparked some conflict, but I think we've been better off, and we've learned how to handle other conversations that are challenging as a result.
So it gave you confidence that since you could work through that conflict, you can work through more conflicts together, I assume?
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other challenges or anything that you've had to navigate so far, and any advice for others who might be going through the same?
Well, I think one that Cory mentioned, there were a couple. I'm thinking the other one is just currently in the process of building a home here and choosing the location of the home. So as Cory mentioned, he's from a more rural area in the States, and I am definitely more of a city boy. But having an 8-year-old kid and wanting to be closer to her, we've had some conversations about where the house should be built. And so, but in the end, it was one, having those candid communications about what we want, which led to us to find a shared goal. And so that shared goal was, one, to be closer to his daughter, and then 2, be closer to his family. Since all my family is in Illinois, his family has become my family, and I'm very thankful for that. And then 3, finding a nice, stable location where we can build a home and build our family. So, and then I guess, 3A is compromise. So, and that when we build our next home, which will be our forever home, that will be a location where I get to apply a bit more weight to the decision about where the location is. So,
that's a good compromise.
Yes, it's a delayed compromise, but that's okay. It's definitely well worth it. And so, but it really was just finding that shared common goal that we wanted to achieve on a short to intermediate term.
That's really good, is when you have a conflict looking at, okay, let's break things up. What is our short-term goal and what is our long-term goal? Where can we each compromise on the short-term basis? Where do we feel compromising on the long-term basis? And also getting on the same page of what you can agree on. I'm sure there are many different factors that both of you guys wanted and were considering, but you at least came to the table with 3.5 things that you could agree on, and you focused on that and placed those priorities as, okay, these are our short-term priorities that are must-haves for now, maybe our priorities might change in the future. And you, Jessie, will have the lead on that wherever that new location is. But I think that's a good approach, and it sounds like it worked for you guys with success.
Yeah,
good.
It has.
Good.
And we'll be closing soon, so we made it through the process, and it was a challenge well worth it. So.
Good. And lastly, are there for anyone who's listening who might be in a same-sex relationship, are there any unique factors that go into your relationship that maybe heterosexual people don't consider when it comes to communication or just societal expectations or anything else? Any advice that you would give to same-sex couples?
That's a really good question. I would say just don't be afraid to jump into your relationship. And so I think society doesn't place a lot of value on same-sex relationships right now. We just got the right to even get married, 9 years ago, I think, so 10 years ago, something to that effect. And so you'd never necessarily picture yourself being able to have a healthy, functioning relationship with a same-sex partner. But at the end of the day is just to remember that you're just two people who love each other, and your relationship will be just as successful as any other relationship, or as unsuccessful as any other relationship. Mm-hmm. It depends on how you treat each other, and that doesn't matter your sex, gender identity, expression, or sexual orientation whatsoever. That just matters about you being just a decent human.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff. Cory, anything else to add to that?
I would say just communicating your needs. Your partner isn't going to know what you need unless you tell them. Mm-hmm. And the communication part obviously comes into play with it, but they need to know what you need. And everybody has certain buckets that they need filled up, and it's just making sure that you're communicating those as you go. So
don't expect your partner to read your mind. If you haven't expressly said that you need something, don't assume that they know that they should just always be in tune 100% of the time to what you're thinking in your mind and what you're feeling. So it helps to verbalize and have that courage to, and what you said earlier, be vulnerable in verbalizing things that might be uncomfortable, like feelings. I'm sure that a lot of people have feelings that they're like, I almost feel shameful sharing that I feel this way in this moment about this thing. But that courage to express this, I'm feeling, this is what I'm needing from you, this is how I'm interpreting the situation, whatever it might be. To your point, sharing your needs, verbalizing what's happening inside helps your relationship outside. Good stuff, guys. Good stuff. Well, thank you so much for being open and vulnerable on this podcast, sharing a little bit about your life, and giving us some representation in love in different forms that we are seeing in society and that we'll continue to see. So thank you so much for being here. Really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having us.
As we wrap up another episode of Connection Artist, I want to express my gratitude to you for listening and exploring how we can all grow and better connect with one another. I created this podcast to support your relationship success and happiness. If you found value in this episode, here's how you can support me and help spread the word about this podcast. First, subscribe to this podcast and share it with 10 friends. If you share this education with 10 people and they share it with 10 people and so on, we can grow this movement of creating a more loving and caring world. If you'd like to show your support on a personal level, visit www.analuca.com. That's ANALUCA. Explore my heart-centric products and education, from poetry books to online courses, art prints to apparel. Every purchase directly enables me to continue producing episodes and sharing these valuable stories and insights with you, because this podcast is not free to create. Please consider buying something I've made with my heart and soul to connect with you. Discover handmade heart-shaped art prints and hoodies featuring my exclusive Crypto Love Drops collection at www.artbyanaluca.com. Read about the inspiration behind these beautiful heart artworks at cryptolovedrops.com. These make really great, unique gifts for your friends, family, and spouse, and serve as a lasting symbolic reminder of your love for them. Or if you enjoy journaling or you'd like to start, get my 15-minute daily guided journal for confident mindset titled Yes, I Can. If you want more stories, buy my poetry book, The People We Meet, available on Amazon or directly on my website, artbyanaluca.com. Just click on the books tab. Listen to my music album called Reprise on Spotify. Fun fact, the opening music track that you heard on this podcast is actually composed by me and is featured in my music album. If you want to learn how to strengthen your self-worth, get my digital ebook called Well Valued, which features a 30-day blueprint for building self-worth. Or if you're single and want to learn how to assess and find your most compatible dating partner using AI, get my digital course called Well Matched. These products are all designed to strengthen your self-worth and relationships and are all linked in my website, www.analuca.com. Also, don't forget to check out my hand-illustrated apparel line at www.laughstoself.com. I hand-designed really funny, cute illustrations that made me laugh, but also serve the purpose of spreading humor, love, and connection with others. That apparel line of hoodies, t-shirts, and sweaters are exclusively available only on my website, so if you want to wear something unique, check out laughstoself.com. Connect with me on social media for podcast and life updates. You can follow me on Instagram or TikTok at AnaLucaOfficial. And lastly, if you're based in the United States and would like to be interviewed on the podcast, send me a message at myconnectionartist@gmail.com to potentially join me as a guest on this show in the future. Remember to subscribe to this podcast and leave a 5-star review. It helps a lot in reaching more listeners like you who can benefit from this information. Thank you for being a part of this Connection Artist community. I'm wishing you so much love and happiness in your relationships. Stay tuned for the next episode.